So today is a very special day for us in the ISKCON world, especially because today is the disappearance day of Sriman Jayananda Prabhu, who exemplified pure devotional service in a humble mood of an all-around devotee who did all sorts of services, was always humble, and was attached to Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. And fortunately, I was one of the, well, at least I had a little chance to associate with him, which I will speak about today. You can just hang it here. Thank you. So first, though, we'll sing the prayers to the departed Vaishnavas. This is by Srila Narottam Das Thakur. And of course, we know this song because we sing it fairly often. Ye anila premadana karuna prachur. Ye anila premadana karuna prachur. Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Charya Thakur. Heno Prabhu Kota Gela Charya Thakur. Kahamora Swarupa Rupa Kahasanatan. Kahamora Swarupa Rupa Kahasanatan. Kahadasa Raghunata Patita Bhavan. Kahadasa Raghunata Patita Bhavan. Kahamora Bhatta Yuga Kaha Kaviraj. Mahamora Bhatta Yuga Kaha Kaviraj. Eka Kale Kauta Gela Gora Nataraj. Eka Kale Kauta Gela Gora Nataraj. Pashane Kotiba Mata Anole Pashibo. Pashane Kotiba Mata Anole Pashibo. Gauranga Gunera Nidhi Kota Gele Pabo. Gauranga Gunera Nidhi Kota Gele Pabo. Say Sabba Sangira Sange Ye Koilo Bilas. Say Sabba Sangira Sange Ye Koilo Bilas. Se Sanganapaya Kande Narottama Das. Se Sanganapaya Kande Narottama Das. Niyaya Nila Prema Dana Karuna Prachoyena Nila Premadana Pracho Jaya Vaishnav Thakur 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 Jaya Jaya Nanda 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 Thakur Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya, Jaya, Prabhupada. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where is such a personality as Srinivasa Acharya gone? Where are my Swarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where is my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishnadas Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all these devotees, in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. Jai Sri Jayananda Thakur. So today is an important day in our calendar because Jayananda Prabhu was the exemplary devotee of the Supreme Lord, of Srila Prabhupada. And he really, in one sense, became the very first saint in our movement because of his devoted service to Srila Prabhupada and his selfless giving of everything to the devotees in our movement. So before speaking, I'd like to just honor Srila Prabhupada. Jai Shri Krishna, Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Bacharani Nirvasesa Sunyavadi Prasacha Deshtarni Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. On Jayananda Prabhu left this world the day before Nrsimha Chaturdasi in the year 1977. And he left before Srila Prabhupada left. And in many ways, it was as if, like Haridas Thakur, he wanted to not be around when Lord Chaitanya left the planet. So he left before Lord Chaitanya ended his pastimes. And in the same way, Jayananda Prabhu was so attached to Srila Prabhupada that he couldn't bear being on on the planet when Srila Prabhupada wasn't. So he left before Srila Prabhupada did. Ostensibly, he had leukemia, but for a devotee like Jayananda, this is just a way that Krishna removed him from this planet so that he could go be with him in the supreme abode of Goloka Vrindavan. Actually, and Srila Prabhupada wrote a posthumous letter to Jayananda right after his passing. This letter was written on May 5th, 1977. And Prabhupada writes to Jayananda, "My dear Jayananda, please accept my blessings. I am feeling very intensely your separation. In 1967, you joined me in San Francisco. You were driving my car and chanting Hare Krishna. You were the first man to give me some contribution, $5,000, for printing my Bhagavad Gita." That was his life savings. And of course, $5,000 in 1967 would be worth a lot more today. After that, you have rendered very favorable service to Krishna in different ways. I so hope at the time of your death you were remembering Krishna, and as such, you have been promoted to the eternal association of Krishna. If not, if you had any tinge of material desire, you have gone to the celestial kingdom to live with the demigods for many thousands of years and enjoy the most opulent life of material existence. From there, you can promote yourself to the spiritual world. But even if one fails to promote himself to the spiritual world, at that time he comes down again on the surface of this globe and takes birth in a big family like a yogi's or a brahmana's or an aristocratic family, where there is again chance of reviving Krishna consciousness. But as you were hearing Krishna Kirtan, I'm sure you were directly promoted to Krishna Loka. Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatvataha kyaktva deham punar janma naitimam eti sorjana. That's Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, verse number 9. Krishna has done you a great favor not to continue your diseased body and has given you a suitable place for your service. Thank you very much. Your ever well-wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. This letter was for us as much as for him, in the sense that we could see how Prabhupada recognized this great saintly person who had done so much service for him. Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatvataha tyaktva deham punar janma naitimam eti sorjuna. For one who understands Krishna in truth, he goes back to him. So the point being here is that Prabhupada saying, you understood Krishna. How? Not because you were a great scholar or because you were so learned in so many scriptures, because he really was very simple, but because you were attached to me, the pure devotee, and because of that attachment to me, serving me, the representative of the Supreme Lord, certainly you have gone back to Godhead, because you were hearing Krishna Kirtan at the time of leaving this planet. Jayananda, he was not necessarily, he wasn't a scholar, as I said, but he was so very Krishna conscious that he was always thinking of Krishna and always thinking of how to serve Krishna. Here's an excerpt of a class that he gave. And his classes were very interesting. I heard one of his classes. Very down-to-earth, simple, not a whole lot of quotes, but you knew that this was a person who was fully connected to the Supreme Lord. So this is an excerpt. So therefore we can have faith that Krishna will always protect us in any kind of situation. That's the potency of devotional service, that it's transcendental to the material, to the bodily conception of life, even up to the point of death. Devotional service is more powerful because devotional service can even attract Krishna. That's the strength of devotional service. The devotion can attract Krishna. So if that devotion, even Krishna says, it is not so much the service that's there, but it's the attitude of the devotee, the sincere desire for Krishna's association. In that way, Krishna will protect. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, for one who does good, he is never overcome by evil. And these are, the sentence where he says, even Krishna says it's not so much the service that's there, but it's the attitude of the devotee, the sincere desire for Krishna's association. So Jayananda's attitude was always to serve, always to be there, to render service to Krishna, the devotees to Prabhupada. So when I joined the Hare Krishna movement, I kind of joined it very abruptly. Well, in one sense, not so abruptly. I'd been coming to the temple and getting books for a long time, but I really had little intention of ever joining anything. But I was very fortunate to be in Portland, Oregon, when Vishnu Jan Maharaj and Tamal Krishna Maharaj brought their traveling Sankirtan party. And through their preaching and the attractive kirtan, I simply jumped on a bus one day and never came back. And within about, it's like a 12-hour drive from Portland to San Francisco. I was in the San Francisco temple maybe like 2 days after I had been shaved up and as a devotee. And there I first met Jayananda Prabhu. And where I met him was, our bus was parked in like a garage, and right next to it was a devotee van. And there was Jayananda changing the oil in the van and doing some other kind of repairs. And he was just completely absorbed in doing that service. And a little later, I remember we were sitting in the prasadam room, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj had his whole bus there, and there may have been about 20 of us. And lo and behold, who comes in to serve out prasadam but Jayananda? Now he's wearing a dhoti, he's all cleaned up, and he's just cheerfully serving everyone. And I was just kind of awestruck at this person who was just so just like a regular guy, but he was so eager to do service to the devotees. It was about 2 years later, no, less than 2 years later, it was about a year later, a little more than a year later, when I was in New York City, and it was shortly before the first Rath Yatra in New York City, and Jayananda was there getting everything ready. And for some reason or other, and I cannot remember why, and I can't even remember who told me, but I was sent out with Jayananda for a day, and for part of a day, to do service, which basically meant that I went on the garbage run with him, taking the garbage out in the van, and then we went on the boga run. And so, I was just wearing, my Sankirtan clothes. In those days, devotees, we were pretty simple. It was like Goodwill clothes. And I was shaved up, and Jayananda was wearing his work clothes, and he was shaved up, of course. And we were going to the different fruit markets in New York, and he would come and he would just go to a place, and everybody would recognize him. They would say, "Oh, Jayananda," or someone would say, "Janananda," or "Johnny Ananda," or something like that, and he would get bananas and cauliflower and all these different, and we just they would just give him stuff, because he'd been going there and all the time and just saying, we need to have we're having a big festival, and we have to get a lot of vegetables and fruits and things to make our preparations to offer the Lord. He was very straightforward, and they, because of his mood of just being so warm and genuine, everyone loved him. And I was just amazed to see how he interacted with everybody in a very natural way. He wasn't preachy or anything. He was just Janananda, and they just completely were willing to give service to him because of his attitude of loving relationship. This was Jayananda. I never heard him get angry or raise his voice to someone in some way to chastise. He was willing always to serve, and he was very willing to give instruction. So I'll read now from some of his history, because how he comes to the movement and who he is a very interesting story. I'll read it here. He was a very educated man. He'd grown up in Ohio and gone to Ohio State University. Was a good student. Had a degree in mechanical engineering from Ohio State University. But he was very dissatisfied with what he called the kind of upper class sort of people, the people who were upwardly mobile, working hard to get a better degree and be rich and famous or whatever. The kind of American dream especially was alive in the mid-'60s. And he ended up driving a cab in San Francisco. He was introspective, but he wasn't particularly religious, and he became very depressed in 1967 and was even contemplating suicide because there was no meaning to life. He was just driving a cab and felt hopeless. But he saw a little article about a Swami who was in the Bay Area who was teaching a yoga where one chants the names of God, and for some reason that it was a ray of hope for him. He felt, this is something. So he went and to a program, and when he went to a program, he became instantly attracted and attached to Srila Prabhupada. It states here that his name was Jim Kaur. Jim began to regularly attend the morning Bhagavatam lectures of Srila Prabhupada. On some occasions, Jim would be the only guest listening to the morning lecture. Soon he became very attracted to Srila Prabhupada and his teachings. Prabhupada lovingly reciprocated and would sometimes personally cook prasadam for Jim and serve him. Soon after, Srila Prabhupada accepted Jim as his disciple and initiated him with a spiritual name, Jayananda. It's stated that actually sometimes Prabhupada would just give him prasadam and keep feeding him, keep feeding him, keep feeding him. And Jim, or Jayananda, he was one of the few non-hippies. He was a little older. Jayananda would be 85 today if he was still alive. He was born in 1939, passed away in 77, so he was 38 years old when he passed away. So he was a little older than the average devotee when he joined. He was almost 30 years old when he got initiated. And of course, the devotees at the time were being initiated somewhere between 17 and 22. So he was a little older, and he was not a hippie. He was a very responsible person. And in fact, for a long period of time, he was supporting the temple by driving the cab. And he was the only one who had a job. Jayananda was completely enamored by Krishna consciousness. He would rise every day before 4, do a little arti, chant his rounds of japa, read and cook prasad. Then he would go for his incense run, selling incense sticks. He never deviated from this. He was completely happy as long as he was practicing Krishna consciousness. Jayananda worshipped prasadam. When a little prasadam spilled on the floor, he would lick it up. He loved to cook, eat, offer, and distribute prasadam in a big way. He even said prasadam with so much love and devotion that it made one immediately want to take some. Another example of his attachment to Krishna consciousness was his love for the holy name. He was always seen chanting and dancing enthusiastically during kirtans. One day, after working hard for 10 hours straight, when all the other devotees were looking forward to taking some rest, Jayananda enthusiastically bounced into the temple room for kirtan. His japa was very intense, very focused, as he strove to personally associate with each and every syllable of the Maha Mantra. I can attest to that. He was very, there was a lot of very intense type of japa in the early days. I mean, where people were looked a little strange maybe. But he was very focused on the holy name. Because I remember being in the temple room with him, and he would be chanting japa very, very fervently. He was a kind of devotee who stood out because he was so devoted, not because he was in a position of big power or giving authority. He was so devoted. This next section is humility. Humility was certainly Jayananda's most prominent quality. He treated everyone as his superior, even new devotees. Although his service was glorious, he never wanted any glory. He avoided praise like the plague. Devotees got to know that if they wanted to keep Jayananda's association, they would better not praise him. His humility was very natural, and he always found something other than himself that was praiseworthy. Even though he was a senior devotee, older than most of the people around him, and eminently qualified, he was happy to simply serve. He never demanded any sort of respect. He didn't take a position. I remember when I was, in other words, there were big devotees in our movement at the time, and they had positions, and many of them were going to go on to become gurus and leaders in our movement. And so association with them was sort of like, you definitely felt like, here's the superior, and you have this sort of servant to guru, almost guru-like positions they would have. But with Jayananda, it was always, you felt like you were, the little average devotee felt like they were with another average devotee, because he didn't want anybody to feel less than him. He always wanted to make people, devotees, feel that they had a comrade of an equal, so to speak, even though he was more advanced than anyone. Once a new boy at the temple wanted to do some service and was asked to help with the trash. The weekly trash run was done by Jayananda, who cheerfully took the little help the boy gave. Later, when the boy became a devotee, he remembered thinking, if the garbage men at this temple can be so blissful, just imagine what the rest of the devotees are like. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the 3rd verse of the Shikshastakam, says that the qualification for offenseless chanting, he says that one can chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking himself lower than the straw on the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Jayananda exemplified this verse. He was so humble that just being in his association would make one feel ashamed of one's pride. That's really true. I mean, when you were with Jayananda, you felt, how can I be proud of anything? Because he's so humble, and he's such an advanced devotee. He He was very special, yet no one paid any special attention to him. That was just the way he liked things. Jayananda had a great service attitude. From the very beginning, as it said that he gave his life savings to Srila Prabhupada to publish the first Bhagavad Gita. Not the Macmillan Bhagavad Gita, but the small Bhagavad Gita that Prabhupada put out first. It had like a light mauve cover, and it was somewhat abridged. So later on, when the Macmillan version came out, which is essentially like the one we have now, it was a big improvement. But this was the first Bhagavad Gita that Prabhupada put out, and Jayananda is the one who enabled it to happen. He gave his whole savings, $5,000, and in 1967, that's going to be like $40,000 today. So it was something that Jayananda would do. He would always put himself in a situation where he was the servant, and by that service, he was exemplifying to the rest of us how we should act in Krishna consciousness. He was really an acharya in that way. Jayananda was an expert at everything: cooking, preaching, deity worship, public relations, sankirtan, selling incense, construction, and anything that it took to spread Krishna consciousness. He was a tireless worker. He was always doing service. Many times when Jayananda went to Berkeley to distribute leftover prasadam, he would first organize a crew to clean the kitchen, working twice as hard as anybody, and then transfer the prasadam and take it over by van to Berkeley and distribute it on the campus to students and others. He never found fault in anybody else either. Perhaps the most defining characteristic of Jayananda was that he never criticized anyone. Even if a devotee did something that warranted criticism, he would usually not say anything, or else make the mistake to appear as something perfectly natural. He never spoke harsh words or chastised anyone. Sometimes devotees would come to him with expansive ideas of how to spread Krishna consciousness. Jayananda would encourage these ideas, however extraordinary. At the same time, he was not a fool. He could always pick up the right man for the job. In other words, he would go along with devotees, but he would make sure that he could do practical service and not get caught up in other types of activities. He was very good at engaging other devotees. In other words, especially as Jayananda became more and more attached to the service of putting on Rath Yatras, he was very expert in getting devotees to help. His preaching style was very simple and direct. He would speak from the heart to the heart. Once he was preaching to a couple of hippies while he crawled under an automobile. All that was visible of him was a pair of legs, yet the hippies stood there transfixed by his message. During Rath Yatra time, he would organize a crew of cynics, hippies, ex-devotees, uncooperative personalities, and non-devotees off the street to help build the carts. And he would get them to work 10 to 14 hours a day, always glorifying them. So he was, from the very beginning, he was the one who, that's why we have Jayananda on the cart. Whenever we have Rath Yatra, he's always on Jagannath's cart, his picture. Because Jayananda, from the very beginning, the very first Rath Yatra was in San Francisco in 1967. And it was on the back of a truck, the very first one. But after that, they had the Rath carts. And he would build the Rath carts, maintain the Rath carts, and then because he was so much into that, when other Rath Yatras were initiated, he started working on them. The most famous of which, of course, is the New York Rath Yatra of 1976, which was the glorious, the most glorious parade ever, practically speaking. The whole Fifth Avenue was shut down. There were thousands of people out, and Prabhupada was there, who had been in New York just a little over 10 years earlier, living in the most humble way, there on the most important street in the world, down Fifth Avenue, with the Roth carts. And this was all, not all, but it was Jayananda's doing. He was behind making sure that these carts were built and that they were functional and that the parade would go on. He was also very renounced. Jayananda had almost no possessions, even during his years as a householder. He was a householder for a short period of time, but his wife left. And he wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada in 1975 asking him, what should I do now that my wife left? And Prabhupada said, don't get remarried. He said, now that you've been married, you've tasted what marriage is, and you can now renounce. And he gave the example of a laddu being a special laddu being sold at a train station, at the train station in Delhi. He says that the people who tasted it said, "Oh, I would lament. I wish I could get that again." And then he said the people who never tasted it would lament, "Oh, I wish I could taste that." He said, now that you've tasted the laddu, you know that you never need to taste it again. So he said, do not lament. You should take sannyas. And he never took sannyas, but he lived a very renounced life. For many years, he was almost single-handedly supporting the temple in San Francisco by driving a cab 12 to 14 hours a day. When he was in his last days of his life, he used the money given him for his treatment to support the Rath Yatra in Los Angeles. He was working on the Rath Yatra cart in Los Angeles. And actually, Prabhupada wrote him a letter, said, don't give the money to me or the Rath cart, save it for your treatment. But he wouldn't even do that. He was being ravaged by leukemia, but he just kept working, and he gave his money that he was going to use for treatment to the festival in Los Angeles. He's described as the king of Rath Yatra. Jayananda was the backbone of the Bay Area Rath Yatra for several years. Behind the scenes, he would do everything for the preparation of the festival. He would beg food, flowers, funds, buy materials, and build the carts. He would arrange for the permits, organize the cooking, and serving of prasad. Although things always went right down to the wire, he would consistently succeed in fulfilling all the plans every year. After the festival, he would cook a cake or a pie for each and every person who had somehow helped in the festival. Because of his efforts, the Bay Area devotees to this day enjoy amazingly harmonious relationships with the city officials. In his last days, Jayananda was busy organizing the Rath Yatra from a hospital bed. He would talk to people on the phone, send his associates to meet various persons, and things began to miraculously materialize. Every moment of his life was preciously used in the service of Krishna. I mean, actually, he was not just in the hospital, he was actually working, helping the carts be built for the Rath Yatra in San Francisco until he actually collapsed. Not San Francisco, Los Angeles. He would not stop serving. It is said that pure devotional service brings about much opulence. Jayananda apparently could function with very little or no sleep. Sometimes he'd be awake for like 5 days in a row before a Rath Yatra. towards the last days of the Rath Yatra, he would be sleepless for 3 days. He would sleep less than 3 hours a day. Yet he was the most energetic and enlivened member of the crew. His propensity to consume prasad was astounding. He could consume buckets of halva, plates of samosas, and potatoes without any side effect. When he was in his last days, he was put on an intravenous diet. Yet he would often ask devotees to sneak in huge quantities of samosas and cheese potatoes for him, which he happily would consume without any apparent distress. So prasadam was very merciful to him. He would sometimes sleep in the Bhagavatam classes since he was very tired. Yet later on he could perfectly quote from the class or have a deep discussion about its contents. It's true. It was like he would be nodding off. But I could see, I remember one class that after the class, he knew everything was going on, even though he seemed to be sleeping. He had a special relationship with Srila Prabhupada. Jayananda had complete faith in Srila Prabhupada. He perfected his devotion by making the instructions of Srila Prabhupada the very core of his life. He was advanced enough to realize that real association was through following the instructions of the spiritual master. Unlike most of the other devotees, he would not go out of who would go out of their way to get some personal association of Srila Prabhupada. Jayananda was content to work in the background, carrying out his instructions. He exemplified the superiority of association by Vani, instructions, over Vapu, personal association. Srila Prabhupada would invariably call on Jayananda when he was in the temple. Jayananda would resist. No, I cannot go. I'm too dirty. I'm too fallen. Such were the transcendental exchanges between the spiritual master and his dear disciple. Yet he had a lot of association with Prabhupada. But his mood was not like, oh, I need to drop everything to get Prabhupada's association. His mood was, I'll do the service because that's what needs to be done. And he wouldn't go out of his way to arrange for association, personal association. Jayananda passed away on May 1st, 1977. He joined the Krishna conscious movement in 1967, just when it was in its beginning, and left the planet a few months before Srila Prabhupada. In the scriptures, it is said that when pure devotees of the Lord appear to execute his will, their associates invariably accompany them. One cannot help but speculate, or that's what it says here, but to think that Jayananda had only come to serve his eternal spiritual master. The fact that Srila Prabhupada was on the planet at the time of his passing is also significant. It let Srila Prabhupada affirm that everyone should follow the example of Jayananda. Prabhupada held up Jayananda as the perfect devotee. And Jayananda became the first saint, in a sense, of our movement. And we've had many devotees leave since, and they're very great. Bhakti Churu Maharaj or Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, or so many, and we remember their service. But it was Jayananda in 1977 who, at an early age, left this world, but left us the example of what it is to be completely dedicated to his Gurudev and do anything to serve. At the same time, as he said in that class, he knew that it's not just service, but it's the attitude of love that has to be there. One can do huge service, but the attitude needs to be in love. I remember Prabhupada speaking about, there was one of his, a future guru who was very proud of his service, and he said something belittling about a person who was a gardener in Mayapur. And Prabhupada said, this gardener has an attitude of pure devotion, and he is every bit as a great devotee. He's a greater devotee than you are. Because he was born in Mayapur and was a simple man. But, this particular devotee who was doing a lot of service was sort of saying, well, he doesn't do much, he just plants flowers, right? And Prabhupada said, no. His attitude is a pure devotee. And that's better than you are. Anyway, and this devotee later on had his issues, but we won't get into that. But the fact is that he's still a devotee. But maybe he looks back on that and says, oh, how Prabhupada taught me. Maybe I didn't understand for a few years. That pure devotion is in the heart. And Jayananda had the pure devotion in his heart. So today we honor Jayananda. We can remember Jayananda. And the fact that he passed away the day before Nrsingadev's appearance day should not be lost upon us, because Lord Nrsingadev protects the devotees in all circumstances. So certainly Jayananda was protected by Srila Prabhupada and by Sri Sri Radha Govinda. Srila Jayananda Thakur Ki Jai. Haribo. Haribo.
Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Ago Vikamaniya Vishesha Shobha Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Angani Yasa Sakalen Driya Priti Manti Vasyan Vipan Vikayanti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Namaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham
Vaishnava Thakura Doyara Sagara Hedase Karuna Gori O He Vaishnava Thakura Doyara Sagara Hedase Karuna Gori Diya Parachaya Sorohe Amaya Tomara Karana Dori Diya Parachaya Sorohe Amaya Tomara Charana Dori Jaya Begadomi, Jaya Dosha Shodi, Jaya Guna Deodashe. Jaya Begadomi, Jaya Dosha Shodi, Jaya Guna Deodashe. Jaya Satsanga Dehoe Amare Bosachi Sangera She Jaya Satsanga Dehoe Amare Bosachi Sangera She Ekaki Amara Nahi Paya Bala Harinama Sankirtane Ekaki Amara Nahi Paya Bala Harinama Sankirtane Tumi Kripa Kori Srada Binduniya Deho Krishna Namalane Tumi Kripa Kori Srada Binduniya Deho Krishna Namalane Krishna se tomara Krishna dite paro Tomara shakati ache Krishna se tomara Krishna dite paro Tomara shakati ache Amito Kangala Krishna Krishna Boli Daitavaya Pache Pache Amito Kangala Krishna Krishna Boli Daitavaya Pache Pache Amito Kangala Krishna Krishna Boli Daitava Pache Pache Amito Kangala Krishna Krishna Boli Daitava Pache Pache O He Vaishnava Thakura Toyara Sagara Edase Karuna Gori O He Vaishnava Thakura Toyara Sagara Edase Karuna Gori Diya Parachaya Sorahe Amaya Tomara Charana Dori Diya Parachaya Sorahe Amaya Tomara Charana Dori Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram. Oh hey Vaishnava Thakur, oh hey Vaishnava Thakur, 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 oh hey Jayananda Thakur, oh hey Jayananda Thakur, oh hey Jayananda Thakur, oh hey Jayananda Thakur, Janananda Thakur, oh hey Janananda Thakur, oh hey Jayananda Thakur, oh hey Jayananda Thakur, Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. O Venerable Vaishnava, O Ocean of Mercy, be merciful unto your servant. Give me the shade of your lotus feet and purify me. I hold on to your lotus feet. Teach me to control my 6 passions, rectify my 6 faults, bestow upon me the 6 qualities, and offer unto me the 6 kinds of holy association. I do not find the strength to carry on alone the Sankirtan of the holy name of Hari. Please bless me by giving me just 1 drop of faith with which to obtain the great treasure of the holy name of Krishna. Krishna is yours. You have the power to give him to me. I am simply running behind you, shouting, Krishna, Krishna. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Sri Jayananda Thakur ki jai. Cheto darpana marjanam, bhava mahajavagni nirvapanam, Shreya kairava chandrika vitaranam, vidya vadu jivanam, Anandam buddhi vadanam, pratipadam purnam daswadanam, Sarvatma snapanam param vadayate, Shri Krishna Sankirtanam, Nam namakari bahuda nija sarva shaktis, Tatrarnita miyamita smananena kala, Eta trisita vakripan bhagavan mamapi, Durdaiva medrishane hanganina nuragaha, Trinadapi sunichena, Tarorapi sahishnuna, Amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari, Nadanam najanam nasundarim, Kavitam vajagadishakamaye, Mama janmani janmanishvare, Bhavatad bhaktiretuki tvai, Ainandandandu jakinkaram, Bhavitamam vishame bhavam buddho, Kripaya lavadvantratijastita dunita chinchintaya, Nayanam galara shuraraya, Vadanam gadgadarugara, Pulakarni chitam vabukara, Tava bama vibhavishati, Yuga yutam dimeshena, Chakshusha pravishayutam, Sunyayutam jagat sarvam, Govinda vidahena me, Ashli shiva paravanam sumam, Adarshamam hargam karutava, Yatatalamanam pato pranastastu sa evana paraha. Victory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years, extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? When will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but you as my Lord, and he shall remain so even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for it is always my worshipful Lord. Shikshastikam ki jai, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.